What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Chris, and this is another installment of An Average Gamer's Guide to Total War Rome 2. Now, today we're going to be talking about skirmish army composition and how exactly to build a skirmish army. I have 4 examples today. It's going to be the exact same ones I use for a balanced army composition guide, and I think I'm just going to continue to use that because it really does help cover all of the different cultures and factions. I feel like there's a good spread. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, the first one we're going to cover is Parthia. So let's go ahead and cover exactly how I would build a skirmish army for Parthia. Now again, this is just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. Adjust it to your playstyle as you see fit, but this is how I would probably like to do it myself. So I'm, again, always partial to having royal cataphracts or any kind of horse general because I like the mobility that it allows. With the Parthians, you'll see there's a little bit of a difference between Parthia and Pontus as I built him. I don't feel like they have very strong infantry. They have very strong cavalry, and so what I decided to do is I put 1 or 2 more infantry units than I would normally into Parthia just to hold like that center line, and then I put in 5 units of Eastern Slingers. Again, if you know anything about me personally, and I totally prefer having slingers over anything else, that range makes a huge difference, and there's not too much of a drop-off when it comes to armor penetration, especially en masse. So I will for 5 slingers, and so the way I would build just the front of my army is just for the 4 hoplites in front, and then, the 2 Parthian swordsmen right in the dead center, and then I would have 2 hoplites on each side, and then hoplites on each side of that. So that or even like pulled back a little bit, so I can use them as flank support or to reinforce the center, because these Parthian swordsmen aren't super powerful, especially compared to a lot of the other swordsmen. Anyway, so going for the Eastern Slingers, I went for 5 of them because I wanted to have a nice upfront just volley. Like, even if I'm only going to get in 2 or 3 volleys before they come in, having 5 slingers is a fair amount to go up against. If you've ever seen some of those CPU armies that happen in the campaign where they're just mostly slingers, you can realize how devastating that can be. Of course, I go for some royal cataphracts and some noble blood cavalry. I love having shot cavalry and normal cavalry. That's meant to be sustained in a fight, so I will always bring in my noble blood first to try to engage as many units of cavalry as possible, and then I'll bring my royal cataphracts from the side to hopefully use that shock factor to my advantage. And of course, being Parthia, I went ahead for the noble horse archers. These guys have the highest fire rate per minute unless you go for javelineers, but I really do enjoy having that extra range as much as I possibly can, and they're nice and flexible, and they have good armor, so if you happen to mismanage them, they might not immediately rout, so you might be able to actually save them compared to some of the other missile cavalry. The way that I would like to deploy my cavalry out, considering that most of my skirmish ability will hopefully be focused on my archers, is that I would have these 2 are going to be 2 units of these, or 1 unit of each of these on each flank, so it's not going to be super strong. So what I would like to do is try to keep my horse archers all on one side, and so I would go ahead and take these melee cavalry, move them up ahead, and try to either engage in a cavalry fight on my own, or try to just take it around the enemy side and use my horse archers to hopefully support at least one of my flanks and take out that cavalry fight, so I can at least have 1 advantage on the sides. This is also where I like having the 2 units of hoplites on the side, so if it is going to be a drawn-out fight on the flank that's not being supported by my horse archers, I can go ahead and bring in at least 1 unit of hoplites, if not maybe 2, if I can be flexible enough to help support that other flank. So I shouldn't really have a chance of losing it. At least maybe it'll be eventually, but hopefully it'll hold out for at least a little bit. The big thing about this kind of setup is using your horse archers to get around the enemy and hopefully throw them off. If you can keep them running around your enemy, they're going to have to dislodge some units, which if you can see this in my balanced army guide, how that kind of pulls off when you bring cavalry around the enemy's side. They go ahead and they break off a bit. So anyways, so that's how I would build Parthian skirmish army. Now next up, I'm going to go ahead and load up my skirmish Pontus army. So again, you'll notice that with Pontus, I do a little bit more infantry, but the big reason behind that is because I like having, for myself personally, I found this to be most effective, whereas with Parthians, like I've only experimented a little bit with them, and I've had a lot more chances to do this with Pontus. So again, I have my two front line pikemen spread out a little bit more on the thin side. I have my hoplites, two on each side, a hoplite in the dead center, and then for my second tier, I would have two hoplites on each side, a hoplite in the dead center, and then the Parthian swordsman smash between them. And my front rank would be of Eastern slingers. And then I have the two each, and then I focus more on my horse archers in Pontus, because I feel like the infantry fight in the center is, I feel like for whatever reason when it comes to Pontus, maybe this is just out of my own personal experience, that uh, for whatever reason those horse archers do a lot more damage than my normal slingers. But every time I fight with other nations or other factions, the slingers seem to devastate. So as when I play Pontus, I always tend to back off a little bit on my slingers. The first volley always seems to miss a ton. So maybe it's a glitch or something. I don't know. But so I'm gonna go ahead and put up 5 of these horse archers instead of adding an extra slinger instead. And I'm gonna try to use the same tactics, relatively speaking, of trying to just support that initial cavalry fight, and then try to get behind. And hopefully, if I can take the same melee cavalry and use them as like a shield or a guard, or get in some nice striking blows against anyone that's chasing my horse archers off as Pontus. So it's got a strong central body compared to Parthia, but again, that's where I feel like Pontus is able to make a little bit of sacrifice in its skirmish, because you don't want to give up too much, but Parthia doesn't have that, isn't going to really ever have a strong central army core, in my opinion. So I went for just having more of that extra skirmish to help counter it. So moving on to Sparta. Now Sparta is a tricky one. They're not really... The best thing about skirmish armies is always having some horse archers, some of that with longer range. But because Sparta doesn't have any horse archers, if you look, they only have Tarentine Cav and some normal skirmish Cav. You basically are stuck with using cavalry that uses spears. So what I went ahead and did was I built up my normal general with the Royal Spartans, and then 2 heroes of Sparta, and then I should go ahead and switch that up. There you go. So I went to 2 Royal Spartans, and then some 2 heroes of Sparta, and then 2 Spartan pikemen. So this will be my front rank, just to slow them down. And I can use my 5 slingers I have here behind them to try to get some good shots in. And then as these 2 guys end up failing, I can bring up again my 4 hoplites here, staggered like I did before. So I would put my general. It gets as much because I don't have as many infantry, but I would try to make sure at least this Royal Spartans is close enough to a hero of Sparta and my general to make sure I have that morale overlap. But so you basically have this front line that you can follow your slingers behind, and then as soon as this one seems like it might be about to break, rush your other slingers your back again from behind your second line, and you can move up your front line of infantry. Sparta has an interesting situation of having really bad cavalry. I mean, they're not terrible, but compared to what is available to other factions in the game, it's just much more helpful to have much more helpful to have this Tarentine Cav. These guys are not good in melee, but what is nice about them is the fact that since they are Peltis cavalry or javelin cavalry, then when I engage these citizen cavalry, they're probably more likely to be able to help tear down any cavalry fights that I'm going into as compared to horse archers. Horse archers are going to be effective, but these guys are going to have better missile penetration. And then if you actually look at the units, their shots per minute is 9, so that's pretty freaking good. They're going to be chucking a ton of javelins in there. The ammunition is quite low, so you want to be careful with it. But at the very least, you're going to be able to get in a fair amount of damage with these guys rather quickly, which is nice. So it does help kind of compensate for the weak melee cavalry they have. So again, trying to win those cavalry fights really quick on the flanks, and then going ahead and trying to use your cavalry to get in around the back and try to smash them up. So this is a little bit like the mobility side, but again, you're trying to focus on keeping distance. So you're trying to peel the enemy apart, because if distance is your advantage, then you want to try to be peppering them so much that they have to dislodge units from their main force and separate them out. And when you're able to do that, then you're more likely to be able to get cavalry strikes in, or weaken them because they have exposed flanks, and so their morale's more likely to drop quicker and that kind of stuff. That's what you really want to focus on when it comes to these skirmish armies. And last but not least, let's go and look at the Icy Knee. Now the Icy Knee again are very interesting because of the fact that they don't actually have any missile cavalry whatsoever. If you look, they have none. They only have melee cavalry and chariots. So what I decided to do instead is I went really slinger heavy. So I did 7 units of slingers, and the way that I would want to deploy this is my main army is I'm going to have my general in the rear. I'm going to have the 3 heroic nobles in the center, and then I'm going to have the spear warband on each side, again for being able to get in there and support the flanks. Heroic riders on each one of the flanks of that main army. And in front, I'm going to have the 7 units of slingers all up in front, and then I'm going to have spread out. I'm going to use these ambushers, and these guys are awesome because they are able to, they have the ability to stalk. So if you look here, it allows them to move hidden on any terrain. So what you can do is you can go ahead and guerrilla deployment, which means you can put them outside the deployment zone. So what's nice is that you can put these guys out at the maximum of your slinger's range, right? You can just keep them there. So if you're defending, this would be ideal, is you put them out at the maximum of your slinger's range, or just inside of it, and whenever the enemy finally gets there, you can, granted they're going to be seen before they can actually charge, but if you can get them to hide long enough and then charge in at the max of your slinger's range, then you're going to have at least a while where your enemy is going to be focused on trying to take down these ambushers, and it's going to buy time for your slingers. Your ambushers are not going to last very long. So this is just a complete ploy to use that advantage of your slingers to your advantage. Having that many, you're going to take down a ton of enemy infantry. You might end up killing some ambushers. That's okay. These are considered disposable units. They are going to be rather expensive, but again, this is all idealistic. And this is how, if I were trying to do a skirmish army, which is difficult for these guys, this is how I would try to do it. Of course, then you also have heroic riders, so if they have to put in a ton of forces to quickly put down your ambushers, then you can always get in some quick strikes with your heroic riders, just slamming in with some quick melee charges, and then running out. So, and they have a pretty decent charge bonus. You see that they have a 29 charge bonus, which is pretty good, I feel, for melee cavalry, because they also don't have any shot cavalry as well. So I feel like that's a pretty decent strategy. And again, of course, once the ambushers are down, if you don't have a fair amount of your enemy already fleeing, then you can always just pull your slingers back and then fight behind your main infantry body. So it depends on exactly how the battle is playing out, but it's a relatively simple idea. Alright guys, so I feel like that's going to go ahead and finish up the skirmish guide. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and go ahead and drop some suggestions or some questions down there for guys that you'd like to see in the future, or just any questions about the game or army composition or anything else like that you would like answered. I'll see if I can get to them in the meantime. But yeah, my name is Chris, and I'll see you guys next time.